Yeah, we'll back up just a little bit and talk about. We've talked about it in the previous episodes about the kind of how what Shell Talmy was seeing here was he signed them to a contract with his production company, and the contract gave him the lion's share of the proceeds of the records that they were signed on for. It was a it was a 5-year contract. It goes all the way to 71. That I do know, and he was allowed to pick the record label that they would use. Okay, flowchart time. So you've got Decca. Stay with us, folks. You've got Decca, U.S. Decca, and UK Decca. UK Decca doesn't want them. U.S. Decca has a label called Brunswick. So U.S. Decca picks up the Who. They record on the Brunswick label in the UK, but the Decca US label in the States. Then we go back to when we talked about Anyway, Anyhow, Anywhere. You've got this big conflict already starting between Shel Talmy and Kit Lambert for various reasons. The boys and Kit don't like Talmy's tutorial style in the studio. They don't like that he's brought in some of his own wrecking crew because, as you say, he had kind of a Phil Spector approach to things. It's a Shel Talmy production featuring the Who, and so they're already clashing, and also there's a definite personality conflict between Kit and Shel Talmy, and then U.S. Decca, they do chart in the UK, and they're doing all right. But in the U.S. division, they don't know what to do with this. They don't really know what to do with a pop group, period, because they're not that kind of label. They're like a country western pop standard label. And now they've got this band that has this extreme sound, this extreme stage presence, and they don't know how to market them, so they just don't. So right? So this is kind of where we are. You've got the band kind of chafing at the idea that Shel Talmy kind of fancies himself as the fifth Who. You've got a record company in the U.S. that's not interested it has no idea how to promote them. And if you don't break the U.S., you're not going to be that successful. You can piddle around in Europe and you can piddle around in Great Britain, but the U.S. is that market. You got to get that market, and they're stalled, and they're destroying instruments. Some of the members are living like rock stars already, even though they're barely taking any money home. So things at this point have gotten very, very extreme and tenuous. That's I'm bringing y'all up to speed like last week previously on Lost.
Previously on the Who, yeah, that's it. No, and that's a really good segue actually into the court case because on 12th of January 1966, Chris Stamp flies to New York. Ironically, on the day that the first version of Circles is recorded with Shel Talmy, which we'll learn a bit more about in shortly. But so Chris Stamp goes to New York to try and get a better deal with US Decca, because, as you said, they're not happy with the deal that they've signed, and they can't broker a better deal for themselves with US Decca. So Chris and Kit Lambert decide we're going to break our contract with Shel Talmy.
Right. They get an advance. He goes to Atco Records, the division of Atlantic Records. And Atlantic Records is like, we like what we see. We're interested. You get out of that contract with Talmy's production company and Decca, and we will sign you with this great big advance. By the way, Chris flew over to the States on Terrence's brother, the movie star, was headed over to NYC to be in the movie The Collector. And Chris was like, can I come with you? And he's like, yeah. He took his first class ticket, downgraded it so they could both ride over. But he's like, he calls the attorney, and the attorney's like, break the contract. And now it's the rubber has hit the road.
That's it. And then what's happening starts making its way slowly but surely into the public realm, because on the 5th of February, it's announced in the NME that the version of Circles recorded with Shel Talmy is no longer going to be the next Who single. And the 12th of February, so maybe just over a week later, Substitute is recorded at Olympic Studios with Pete producing and not Shel Talmy. Although, interestingly, Shel Talmy did claim that he actually produced Substitute. And I was due to interview him, I think on the day he actually died, if not that week.
Yeah.
And that's something I was going to ask him about actually, but obviously never got the chance. But I've spoken to Andy Neal about this, and he
Yeah.
doesn't believe that he doesn't think Shel Talmy's remembering that correctly. Let's put it that way.
And we'll get to some of that where if we want to jump back for just a second, remember the Who were happy to sign with Shel Talmy because they really wanted to get in the studio. So they did sign this sort of awful contract because they just wanted to get in the studio. They wanted studio time, but also because the Kinks had done All the Day and All the Night, and You Really Got Me with Talmy.
Hmm.
And this will come into play later on in the court case about how much Talmy really did. Because Ray Davies has said later, many years later, that yeah, he didn't really do that much in terms of recording. He didn't ever producing it. He didn't really do a lot, and we'll see that contention revisited with the Who with varying effects.
That's it. Yeah. Actually, it'd be remiss of me, remiss, whatever the word is. It'd be wrong of me
Yes,
to not mention that a lot of the information in this episode has come from this book,
yes,
co-written by Andy Neal and Matt Kent. And I also got to give a shout out to Brian Cady and the Who this month, which was another big
yes,
resource point for this episode,
yeah.
and basically putting this timeline together.
Yeah, and also if I've got Fletcher's, I went to the tomes of our people. Like I said, used a bit of Fletcher's book, a little Dante DeCarlo's book, a little of Ian Mark Wilkerson's book, of Dave Marsh's book. So yeah, I had the tomes out, going through all of this, and a little bit of Wikipedia.
You've got to have a little bit of Wikipedia.
A little Wikipedia. You can have a little Wikipedia as a treat. Yes.
Yeah, but hopefully this timeline is serving as some kind of foundation for all the tangents we're going to go off on with this
Right.
episode. Um, so yeah, so Substitute's been recorded at Olympic Studios. Pete's producing it. And I think that's one of the ironies that you mentioned just before we started recording, that there's this lengthy, complicated court case that's going to stretch into the next decade. And yet
Yeah.
this is a song Pete just basically tossed off, basically stole a riff from another
Right.
song.
The story is that he heard it. He heard the initial recording of the Stones' 19th Nervous Breakdown, which technically, if I'm not mistaken, again the timeline stuff would have been recorded about 3 weeks before Substitute would have been recorded.
Oh.
So, like, if that's the case, Pete's got this 3-week window to create a new song that Shel Talmy can't claim. He is really into Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, Tracks of My Tears. And there's a line in it about isn't she's cute, she's just a substitute. And he likes that, so he wants to use that. And then he'd been in Melody Maker's Blind Date column, which if our reader or listeners and readers aren't familiar with, it was a column where you would get a pop star in and you would play them different records, not telling them who the artist or the song was, and then let them kind of guess, who it is and their thoughts about it and whether or not it would be a hit. So Pete, here's a song by.
It's by Rob Storm and the Whispers, Where Is My Girl?
Right, and he hears this riff, and he likes the song. He gives it a really good review. The band is so happy that this guy who's the buzz king of London in 1966 has liked their record. They send him a letter thanking him for it, and he steals the riff. but he doesn't say anything then. But in '71. He's all like, yeah, I totally took that riff. So if you listen to the song, you definitely hear it at the beginning. You can make the argument that it substitutes its own animal, but he does definitely snag that riff.
Yeah, you can totally hear it in that song. It's a nice song as well, I think.
Oh, it's a really good song. Like, it should have been poised for. Of course, it would have complicated things a great deal if it had been a hit. And Substitute had been a hit, because then we probably would have another loss.
And we'd have to make this a 4-part episode.
Exactly. So fortunately, it was not a hit.
Yeah, thank God for that.
Mm.
I didn't know that Pete had written they'd written Pete a letter though. That's nice.
Yes, thank you for liking our song. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
I love this. If you ever get it, if you I don't know, you've probably read them, the blind dates. Some of them are so funny because there's one they do with John, and he hates every song except the cover of except the cover of Edelweiss. And he's like, oh, I hate this. Oh, I hate that. Oh, Edelweiss. Yeah, I like this. Oh, it's pretty good.
Hard man to please. And you've already made reference to this, but with ATCO, um, so we will jump ahead to the 18th of February, where
Okay.
Melody Maker announced that the Who have now signed to Robert Stigwood's new label, Reaction Records, which is a
Yes.
subsidiary of Polydor, and the American releases going forward are going to be on ATCO, which is a subsidiary of Atlantic Records. And
Yes.
yeah, we sort of that's sort of our introduction to one of the first colourful characters in this story, Robert Stigwood. Do you want to
Yeah.
say a little bit about Robert Stigwood?
I've got a little bit to say about Robert Stigwood. So Stiggy was their agent, and he was also, if you get my drift, he was a running homie of Kit Lambert. This is kind
Right.
of this will come up later. So he creates one of the first independent labels. There's Immediate, which is Andrew Lou Goldham's label, and so Stigwood creates Reaction. And because of this lawsuit, and because the Who aren't going to record for Brunswick and Decca US, Stigwood picks him up for Reaction. And the way Pete puts it later is that Robert Stigwood's going to be the person with the least he's going to be the least target of blowback from all of this. So he's like, yeah, cool, let's go for it. Stigwood's a really interesting character because at this time, like I say, he's sort of this guy that sort of just has this little label. He will go on to manage Cream and subsequently Eric Clapton, and even bigger, the Bee Gees. And with the money that he makes with Clapton and the Bee Gees, say he becomes part of the Hooniverse, the extended Hooniverse. He will be the money behind the movie Tommy, some of the money. He will be he will famously back Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice, Jesus Christ Superstar, Evita. He will put the money behind those movies as well. He will be the money behind Saturday Night Fever. And I think I want to say too, probably Grease. Like that man was like the '70s pretty much personified. He was involved in a lot of '70s culture.
Yeah, that's it. So
Yeah.
yeah, again, lots of huge kind of cultural things that evolve from this story in a way.
Little 3 week song. Yeah.
Yeah, so when you start sort of tying these threads together, it really is it is fascinating. I mean,
Yes.
originally I thought, you read about the substitute court case and everything, and in my head, it ends up Lambert and Stamp do a deal with Shell Tell Me on the court steps, and I just assumed
Yes.
that that's probably a week later, but it turns out it's
Right.
6 months. It's 6 months later.
Which is yeah, which makes you know the immediacy of trying to figure this case out is that 6 months in a band's life can kill a band if they're not allowed to record, if they're not allowed to, do they have ownership of their own songs even? Like it's enough to kill a band in this really heated crucible of pop stardom that's happening. So yeah.
Absolutely. And that brings us on to the release date, the 4th of March, when two versions of the substitute single are released on the same day in the UK. So
Yes.
one of the B-sides is Circles, which we mentioned earlier, but this is a
Yes.
re-recorded version, which has been recorded at Olympic Studios towards the end of January. And again,
Yes.
it's the Who producing themselves, essentially. And then the other B side is called Instant Party, which is exactly the same song as Circles, but with a different title. And
In a title of an outtake. That's what got me so confused. Was I was like, why are they calling it when I was younger? Before I delved into the books of this case, why would they call that song "Instant Party"? And then finding out there was actually an "Instant Party" that was recorded that was a whole different song. But that was why, was because they thought they could do an end run around "Shell Tell Me." Oh, this is not that song. This song is called "Instant Party."
So are you talking
And,
about Instant Party Mixture as the other song?
yes, like
Yeah.
this, so confusing.
Yeah.
But what's cool is this. So again, we talked before about how the Wild West everything was at this time in terms of, who owns songs, who can record that, who this and who that, and they're doing what we now know is like Taylor's versions of things. Taylor Swift, her catalog was bought up by this guy that she did not care for, Scooter Brown, and so Kelly Clarkson of all people came to her and said, re-record your songs, re-record the songs that he owns, re-record them. And then you'll have your own masters, because he wouldn't give up her masters. So she did, and every Taylor Taylor Swift song that you hear on the radio is Taylor's version. She's cut that dude completely out. So and now she owns her music, she owns her masters, and all of that. And that's what the Who were trying to do at this point. Pete owns the song. He owns his catalog, which his parents were super smart enough to negotiate early on. So he owns the song, and if he just calls it something else, they're thinking, okay, we can release this, but other things start happening. It's not settled law yet.